What would you do if the man you once saved erased you the next morning? Have you ever given your all for someone, only to be forgotten the next day? Some scars don't show on skin. They hide in silence, in the space between what happened and what should have been said. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where every story holds a mirror to love, loss, and the moments that change everything. Today's story will grip your heart and leave you thinking about second chances in the quietest places. Let's begin. The penthouse felt like a museum. Tall glass windows stretched from floor to ceiling, showing off a city that never stopped moving. But inside, time stood still. Every step echoed. Every surface gleamed. It was a world built for someone who had stopped needing comfort a long time ago. Elira moved through it carefully, mop in one hand, small towel tucked into her apron. She had only been working there for 2 weeks, but already she'd learned the rhythm: never speak unless spoken to, don't touch the sculpture in the hallway, and always finish before Mr. Trevaux came home. Ronan Trevaux. His name meant something to people. Tech circles whispered it. Investment blogs quoted it. Billionaire lists flashed it near the top. But to Elira, he was a shadow who came and went through private elevators and closed office doors. A man built out of cold eyes and colder silence. She didn't mind. She wasn't there to be seen. She wiped down marble counters and refolded the white towels in his bathroom, with the kind of care she used to give her little brothers back home. Everything she did came from habit and need, not choice. There had once been bigger dreams: a nursing degree, a small clinic near her neighborhood. She remembered staying up late at the kitchen table with her mother, going over anatomy flashcards and making tea in mismatched mugs. Then her mother got sick. Bills came faster than treatment. By the time she passed, the loans had swallowed every future Elira had imagined. So when she found work cleaning penthouses, she took it. It paid on time. And in this city, that meant more than most things. That night, the rain didn't stop. It came down in sheets, blurring the windows, hammering the rooftop, drowning the city in sound. Most of the staff had clocked out early. Traffic alerts lit up every phone. Flooding warnings, lightning over the East River, metro delays. Elira stayed. It wasn't just about finishing her shift. Something about leaving felt wrong, like something hadn't settled. She moved quietly down the west hallway to return fresh towels when the light above her blinked, then flickered out. The walls buzzed, then the power cut entirely. Her heart thudded. Emergency lights buzzed to life overhead. Dim, reddish. The penthouse suddenly felt like a tunnel, airless, still, and then she heard it, a loud, sudden thud, coming from the private office, Mr. Trevaux's space. She froze, listening. Nothing. Then, another dull sound, a drag, a gasp. Her feet moved before her mind caught up. She rushed to the control panel near the main security closet. Emergency override codes weren't shared, but she'd watched the concierge use them once in training. Her fingers hovered, unsure. Then she typed them in. The panel blinked green. The office door clicked open. Ronan was on the floor. One hand gripped the edge of the desk. His other was pressed to his chest. His face was pale. His breath came short, like it hurt to even take it. "Sir?" she whispered, kneeling beside him. His eyes flicked toward her, dazed. She remembered the steps from first aid classes. Keep him upright. Steady his breathing. Loosen the tie. Call for help. "I need to—" She started to rise. His hand shot out and caught her wrist, weak but urgent. "Wait," he rasped. "Help's coming," she said quickly. "You're having maybe cardiac, I don't know, but just breathe. Okay? Breathe." He nodded slightly, eyes fluttering. Elira's hands shook. She checked his pulse. Fast, uneven. She stayed by his side until the medics arrived 10 minutes later. By then, the power had come back, but nothing felt normal anymore. She didn't see him the next day, or the one after that. But on the third morning, when she arrived with her supply cart, the head housekeeper met her at the elevator. "Change in assignments," the woman said with a clipped tone. Mr. Trevaux wants you to handle his suite directly. No rotation. Elira blinked. Me. The woman didn't answer. She only handed her the new floor passcode and walked away. His suite was quiet. Dim lights, colder air, and the faint smell of pine from the wood polish. Elira walked in with slow steps, unsure of what to expect. She found him seated near the window, back straight, suit perfectly pressed, as if nothing had happened. "Good morning, sir," she said quietly. He didn't look at her, only said, "Thank you." That was it. No mention of the night, no questions, no dismissal. Just, "Thank you." And that single word shifted something in the room, like the window had cracked slightly open, enough to let something real in. The next week passed like breath held in a glass room. Elira followed her new routine with quiet precision. She handled only Ronan's suite now. No more rotating between floors or waiting for instructions. No more sharing cleaning carts. Her supplies were restocked daily, always the same. Linens, sprays, cloths, sealed soaps. She was in and out of his space like a shadow. Most days, Ronan didn't speak. Sometimes, she wouldn't even hear him come in. He moved like silence made him stronger. And yet, he noticed everything. If she slightly rearranged the position of the couch pillow, it was reset by morning. If she left a light on by mistake, it was off before she returned. She wasn't sure what game they were playing. But every morning, she showed up, and every evening, she left with questions crowding her chest. On Friday, something changed. Elira arrived early. Rain had started again, not a storm this time, just a slow, steady wash over the city. The clouds made everything darker. She entered the suite expecting the usual chill, but the lights were already on. She paused near the entry, then heard him. "Come in," Ronan said without turning around. He stood near the window again, hands in his pockets, eyes on the skyline. Elira waited, unsure if he wanted to speak or just didn't mind her being there. "You don't ask many questions," he said after a pause. Elira's voice was calm. "It's not my place." He nodded slowly, still not facing her. "What if I said I was tired of being surrounded by people who only speak when they want something?" Elira's eyes flicked toward him. She swallowed. "Then I'd say maybe silence isn't the worst company." He glanced over his shoulder. A corner of his mouth lifted, not quite a smile, but close. She stayed where she was. He turned back to the glass. "I was conscious that night," he said. "Not fully, but enough. I heard you." Her hands tightened around the edge of the cleaning cart. "I didn't mean to step out of line. You didn't—" Another pause. "You didn't panic. That's rare. I used to want to be a nurse." That caught his attention. He turned fully this time, facing her. "Why didn't you?" She hesitated, then said simply, "Life." Ronan studied her face as if trying to read between the lines, then gave a quiet nod, as if that single word told him everything. It didn't, but she wasn't ready to explain more. That day, she stayed longer than usual. She finished her tasks, wiped down the windowsills, arranged the fresh towels, and still, he hadn't asked her to leave. When she finally moved to the door, he said, "What's your name?" It caught her off guard. "Elira," she said softly. He repeated it. "Elira." There was a weight to the way he said it, like he was trying it out for the first time in his head. "Thank you, Elira," he said. "Not just for the towels, not just for the polished counters or the organized shelves. For staying, for saving him, for not asking for anything in return." She gave a small nod, then left. Over the next few days, their silence shifted. She brought his coffee in the morning without being asked. He drank it slowly, as if the bitterness grounded him. Sometimes he would speak first, a line about the weather, a comment about the news. Once, he looked up from his laptop and asked, "Do you believe in regret?" She had paused, surprised. "I think we all live with some—" He didn't say anything more, but his hands had stilled over his keyboard. One morning, she arrived early to find him already dressed, seated at the kitchen bar, reading a document. "I used to hate mornings," he said without looking up. Elira placed the small tray of breakfast items on the counter. And now, they still feel heavy, but it's easier with coffee. She didn't answer, but the corners of her mouth curved, just barely. He noticed. The day it truly shifted came with no warning. She was wiping down the bookshelf in his office, something he rarely let anyone do. His shelves were filled with titles she didn't recognize. Thick tech manuals, business theory, one old collection of poetry tucked between two oversized financial books. She tilted her head. "You read Neruda?" Ronan looked up from his tablet. "Sometimes," he said. "Not because I understand him, but because he understood people like me." Elira turned toward him. Her hand rested lightly on the spine of the book. "I always thought poetry was for people who believed in softness. And you don't?" She looked at him then, steady. "I used to." Their eyes held for a moment too long. By the end of that week, she no longer felt like a stranger in the room. He didn't ask personal questions, but he listened when she spoke. She didn't cross boundaries, but she no longer moved like a ghost. They had found a strange, unspoken rhythm, one built on shared silence, and something deeper neither of them had yet named. There was something about early morning light that softened even the hardest edges. Elira stood at the kitchen island, organizing the fresh fruit and pastries his assistant sent up each morning. Ronan hadn't come out of his room yet. The penthouse was still and warm, shadows curling along the floor like they didn't want to be disturbed. She should have felt out of place, standing in a kitchen she'd never eat in, preparing food she'd never taste. But the air didn't carry that sharp distance anymore. It carried something else, something quiet and waiting. The click of polished shoes on the floor made her turn. Ronan entered without a word, dressed in charcoal slacks, dark sweater, barefoot, always composed, even when casual. He poured his own coffee now. That was new. He took a sip, then nodded to the plate. "That banana bread's decent. The assistant makes them order from some overpriced bakery in Tribeca." Elira raised an eyebrow. "And yet, you eat it every day." "It's a routine thing," he said, sitting at the bar. "Routines work when people don't." She smiled faintly. "That sounds like something someone says when they trust routines more than people." He didn't argue. He sat in silence for a while, watching the steam rise from his cup. Then, without looking up, he asked, "Do you live alone?" The question wasn't sharp, just sudden. "I do," she said carefully. "Rented apartment in Woodside, Queens," he murmured. "Long commute." She shrugged. "I've had longer." More silence. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. "I used to think proximity was power," he said eventually. "The closer I was to the center of everything, the more control I had. And now..." He looked at her then. "Now I think I built a fortress and forgot to put a door." Elira didn't know what to say, so she stood still, her hands resting lightly on the edge of the counter. "Do you ever miss something?" he asked, without knowing exactly what it is. She blinked. Yes. His gaze lingered on her. Then he turned away and took another sip. That afternoon, he stayed home longer than usual. Meetings were cancelled. The assistant didn't come. The phone barely rang. Elira moved from room to room, trying not to think about the way his presence filled the space. Not heavy, but constant. He worked from the living room couch instead of his glass-walled office. No laptop, just a notebook, pen in hand. Something about it felt unfamiliar. "What are you writing?" she asked, surprising herself. He didn't look up. "Something I won't show anyone." She nodded, but didn't move. He flipped the page. "You ask fewer questions than most people." "You don't answer most questions," she said, soft but direct. That made him look up. He stared at her, almost amused. "You're not like the others they send here." She tilted her head. "Should I be?" "No," he said, after a beat. "Don't change anything." That evening, Elira found herself lingering by the bookshelf again. Same titles, same order. That single poetry book, tucked between the giants. She touched the spine again. Behind her, Ronan said, Pick a page. She turned. He stood in the hallway, arms crossed, watching her with something unreadable in his eyes. She pulled the book out and opened to a random page. Her finger landed halfway down. She cleared her throat. I want to do with you what spring does with the cherry trees. His expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air. She looked up. He was still. The silence stretched between them. Not awkward, just full. She closed the book slowly and slid it back into place. The next morning, the same book sat on the kitchen counter, open to the same page. He never mentioned it, and neither did she. But the air had changed again. Later that week, Elira brought in his coffee and found him already seated by the window, arms resting on the back of the couch. She placed the cup down gently. I never asked, he said. Why nursing? Her fingers curled around the tray. Because it felt like the one thing I could do that didn't require power to matter. He studied her, helping someone breathe again. Sit up, feel human. That's not about authority, it's just care. He nodded once, then asked, Do you miss it? Every day. She didn't expect him to reply, but after a pause he said, Then, maybe you should go back. Her eyes met his. I can't afford it, she said. And I'm a little too tired to fight for dreams that slipped through already. Dreams don't slip, he said. People drop them when their hands get too full. She didn't answer, because she knew he wasn't just talking about her. Ronan didn't say it, but something changed after that conversation. He no longer kept his distance in the way he used to. He still worked long hours, still disappeared into conference calls and encrypted emails. But when Elira was near, he didn't ignore her anymore. He asked questions, not invasive, just curious. Once, while she restocked the pantry, he asked, What's the first memory you still carry? She paused, pulling the box of herbal tea forward. My mother's hands. She was making soup, stirring slowly. She hummed all the time, like her voice needed to move even when her mouth didn't. Ronan nodded, quiet. My father used to make soup too, he said, but it came from a can. They didn't laugh, but they smiled. There was a rhythm now, small conversations, fleeting glances. The tension wasn't sharp, it was soft, like wool being pulled between them. Elira never sat unless he asked. She never crossed lines, never lingered too long. But her presence grew familiar, and he started leaving things undone. A mug in the sink, a note scribbled and tossed aside, a light left on, as if he didn't mind if someone saw him a little undone. Late one Thursday, he came home earlier than usual. Elira had just finished tidying the reading nook when she heard the elevator chime. Ronan stepped in, shoulders looser than usual, jacket already off. Long day? She asked, then caught herself. Sorry. He waved it off. No, ask away. It was. He walked into the kitchen, pulled open the fridge, then closed it again like he didn't know what he was looking for. I haven't eaten, he said. Have you? She shook her head, unsure where this was going. He reached into the cabinet and pulled out 2 mugs. Tea? He asked. Elira blinked. You're offering me tea? He gave her a sideways glance. You saved my life. Tea feels like the least I could offer. She stepped forward, uncertain, but took the mug. They stood in silence as the kettle boiled. I don't let people in, he said suddenly, eyes fixed on the steam rising. Not here. Not really. Elira didn't speak. I built everything I have by keeping my guard up. I've let that protect me so long that I forgot how to drop it. You don't have to explain anything to me, she said softly. Maybe not, he replied. But I want to. They sat on opposite ends of the couch. The tea warmed her hands, and the silence wasn't awkward. It was thick with understanding. I used to think being alone was safer, he said. I never had to risk losing anything. Elira studied him. And now, I don't know what changed, he said. Maybe it was that night, maybe it's you. But I look at this place and I wonder why it never felt like home. She didn't look away. Maybe because no one else ever stayed. That silenced him. He set his mug down and looked at her for a long time. Then, so slowly, he said, You don't scare me like the others do." Her throat tightened. "I'm not trying to—" "I know." The next day, she found a note on the counter. 2 words, written in his unmistakable sharp handwriting: "Thank you." No signature, no date. But it felt like something heavier than all the expensive artwork hanging on his walls. That weekend, the weather broke. Sunlight poured through the windows, and the city stretched open again like a sore muscle. Ronan cancelled his meetings and stayed in. He didn't say why. Elira arrived to find him barefoot, in a plain white t-shirt, sipping something that wasn't coffee. He looked softer, different. "Want to sit?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. They sat in the window bay together, legs tucked, city beneath them. "This view always felt cold," he said, "but now I think it was just empty." Elira didn't reply. She didn't need to. That night, the air in the penthouse felt different. Not tense, not heavy, just full, like something was blooming, too quietly to name but too real to ignore. Have you ever found yourself falling for someone in silence, without even meaning to? Does love always need grand moments? Or is it hidden in the quiet ways we show up? If Elira and Ronan's story is stirring something in you, tell us in the comments. And if you believe in second chances, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Rain returned, like a memory that refused to stay buried. It didn't fall lightly this time. It pounded the windows of the penthouse, wind pressing against the glass like it wanted in. Thunder rolled over Manhattan, low and endless. Elira watched it from the hallway, towel still in hand, cleaning half forgotten. The lights flickered once, then again, then settled into a steady dimness. Another storm. Another night that felt like something might shift again. She hadn't seen Ronan since morning. His assistant had called off all appointments for the day. Something about system outages. But even without the meetings, the silence between those walls had weight. At 7:15 p.m., she turned the corner and found him seated on the couch, not in his usual suit, not behind his glass office desk. He wore a dark shirt, sleeves rolled up, one hand cradling a glass of untouched bourbon. The rain cast streaks of shadow down his face. She paused. "I didn't hear you come in." "I've been here," he said. His voice was low, distant, just thinking. Elira nodded once and turned to step away, unsure if he wanted solitude. Elira. Her name stopped her. "Sit for a minute." She hesitated, then crossed the room and lowered herself onto the far end of the couch, her hands folded neatly in her lap. He didn't look at her. "I thought I was dying that night," he said quietly. "The one when the system failed." "I know. I heard your voice. I remember it better than anything else about that night." She didn't know what to say, so she stayed still. He turned to her now. "Why didn't you leave that night after the paramedics came?" "I didn't want you to wake up alone," she said, "even if you never remembered I was there." He let out a breath, not a sigh, but something closer to release. "You were the first person in years who stayed without being paid to." Her chest tightened. "That night changed things," he said. "I've tried to ignore it, tried to stay in control of it. And," she asked, "I'm tired of trying." The lights flickered again. A rumble of thunder rolled through the building. The rain was relentless now, drumming against the glass in wild rhythm. Ronan looked at her like he was memorizing the shape of her stillness. "You've been the calmest part of my life for weeks," he said. Elira shook her head gently. "I'm just someone doing my job." "No, you're not." His words carried no heat, just quiet certainty. She looked away, unsure what to do with the air between them. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said. "I just need to say this once." She turned back slowly. "You make this place feel like something more than glass and furniture." Neither of them moved for a long time. The storm built louder. Lights dimmed again. Then a crack of thunder shook the building, followed by a brief blackout. The emergency lights kicked in, low and warm. The room took on a golden glow, shadows dancing along the walls. It was in that moment when the rest of the world faded, that Ronan stood up and crossed the space between them. He didn't sit beside her. He knelt, gently took her hand. "Tell me to stop," he said quietly. She didn't. Her breath caught in her throat as he brought her fingers to his lips. Not rushed, not needy, just reverent. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured. "I've made peace with silence. But I can't keep pretending that you don't matter." Her voice broke through the stillness. "You matter to me too." He sat beside her now, not close enough to touch, but no longer distant. The energy shifted again. Their shoulders nearly brushed. The couch felt smaller somehow. And then his hand grazed hers, not by accident. Her fingers tightened slightly. That was all it took. He turned, and in one slow movement, Ronan leaned in, not demanding, not forceful. He met her halfway, his lips brushing hers with the kind of gentleness that undid every careful rule she'd built since the day she met him. She didn't pull back. The kiss wasn't rushed. It deepened, slowly, honestly, like they'd waited too long for it, and neither wanted to risk breaking it. When they parted, her forehead rested against his. Neither spoke, because there were no words left. Outside, the rain fell harder. Inside, two people finally let themselves be seen. They didn't speak for the next few minutes. They didn't need to. Elira sat close beside him, her fingers resting lightly in Ronan's open palm. His thumb moved slowly over her skin, like he wasn't ready to let go of something that felt this still. The storm softened outside, but the silence between them stayed full. She turned her head slightly, catching the sharp angle of his jaw, the quiet tension in his posture, like he'd finally done something that scared him. Not because it was wrong, but because it was real. He rose slowly from the couch. "I'll make tea," he said, almost too quietly. Elira stood too, unsure if the moment had ended, if everything would be swept away like footprints in rain. But when he turned back to her in the kitchen, she saw it, plain and honest in his eyes. He wasn't walking away. He was grounding himself. He poured 2 mugs without asking what kind she preferred. He'd already remembered. Herbal, mint, no sugar. They sat at the kitchen island, sipping slowly. No more words, no tension, just peace. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Then Ronan looked at her again. "You don't have to stay." She nodded slowly. "I know. But if you do," he added, "it's not because of obligation or routine." Her eyes didn't leave his. "I've never stayed anywhere out of routine." He took that in like it meant more than she said. Because it did. He didn't touch her again, not immediately. He let the quiet hold them instead. But when the lights flickered once more, when thunder cracked in the far-off distance, when the hour pulled, past midnight without either of them noticing, Ronan walked her to the guest room door, not as an employer, but as a man trying to move gently towards something that had no name yet. He stopped in front of the door. The hallway felt warmer somehow. "I don't know what happens after this," he said. "I'm not good at soft things, or slow things." Elira tilted her head. "Then don't try to be anything, just be here." That made him pause. His hand brushed her arm. "Just once. I've wanted to kiss you since the second day you started speaking to me," he admitted. "But I didn't trust myself to want something I couldn't control." She smiled faintly. "You didn't kiss me out of control, Ronan. You kissed me out of honesty." He lowered his eyes for a moment, then nodded. "I'll see you in the morning." "Only if you want to." "I do." She stepped inside the room, closing the door softly behind her. Elira sat on the edge of the bed, heart still racing. She placed her hand over her chest and closed her eyes. Everything in her told her this shouldn't have happened. Everything else told her it was exactly what needed to. Not because it was romantic or perfect, but because it was the first time in years someone had looked at her and not seen a job title or an obligation, just her. Across the suite, Ronan stood by the living room window, tea still warm in his hand. He should have felt panic, or confusion, or regret, but what he felt was calm, like he'd finally let something in that had waited outside too long. He didn't expect anything more from the night. He didn't plan the next step. But for once, the future didn't scare him, not if it meant more moments like this one. The next morning, Illyra woke early. Habit. She dressed, tied her hair back, and moved through the penthouse as she always did. Except, everything felt different. Ronan was already in the kitchen when she entered. Dressed, coffee in hand, same controlled calm. But his eyes lit up when he saw her. She froze slightly, unsure what to do. But he broke the pause. "Good morning, Illyra." Not cold, not clipped, warm, gentle. Her smile came easy. "Good morning." He handed her the second cup of tea without asking. She took it without hesitating. No mention of the kiss. No need, but everything had changed. And they both knew it. By noon, the rain had cleared. But neither of them wanted the storm to be forgotten. Because for the first time, silence didn't mean distance. It meant closeness. It meant trust. It meant they'd crossed a line, and neither of them wanted to go back. The first sign that something changed was the key code. Monday morning. Illyra pressed the usual sequence into the panel beside Ronan's private elevator. It blinked red. She tried again, slowly, carefully. Red. Her heart thudded. She stepped back and checked her schedule, just in case. But her name was no longer listed under Penthouse Suite. Confused, she rode the staff elevator down to the main service desk. The head housekeeper, a woman named Lisette, barely looked up. "Oh, right. You're back on rotation. Executive Wing, Level 29. Illyra blinked. "Since when?" "Today. I wasn't told." Lisette shrugged. Orders came through late Friday. Direct from corporate. Illyra opened her mouth, then closed it. There was no message from Ronan. No explanation, no note. Just silence. She worked the executive level in a daze. Everything was clean and impersonal. CEOs, consultants, and visiting executives left their suites in perfect order, never bothering to speak. She moved through the motions, cleaned, folded, organized, but her hands shook. Every time she passed the private elevator in the corridor, her breath hitched. What had happened? Had she crossed a line? Had the kiss meant something to her, but not to him? By 5 p.m., her chest ached. That night, Illyra sat at her tiny kitchen table in Queens, phone screen glowing in the dark. No missed calls, no texts. Not that she expected any. She never had his number. But part of her hoped, maybe, somehow, he'd reach out. He didn't. She waited 2 days before doing something she never thought she would. She wrote him a letter. "Mr. Trevaux, I'm not writing to question decisions you have the right to make. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't confused. I didn't cross a line lightly. I wouldn't have, if I didn't believe it mattered. If it didn't mean anything, I won't ask for an explanation. But if it did, and you're afraid of what it changed, please know that silence does more damage than truth ever could. Illyra." She folded it neatly and handed it to the receptionist at the front desk the next morning. The woman promised it would be delivered. It never was, or maybe it was. But she never got a reply. Weeks passed, and with every day of silence, Illyra forced herself to let go. She buried herself in work, took night shifts, helped her neighbors' children with their homework, kept her phone on, even though it never rang. Her dreams began to fade again. And the tenderness she'd felt in that penthouse became something she stopped letting herself revisit. One morning, she woke up dizzy. Nausea twisted through her as she moved toward the sink. She thought it was the flu, until the symptoms didn't go away. And then something else didn't show up. She sat in the pharmacy's bathroom, knees pressed together, pregnancy test on the edge of the sink. 2 lines. 2 pink, unmistakable lines. She covered her mouth with her hands and cried, not from fear, but from everything she didn't know how to feel. That night, she tried again. Another letter. This time, she kept it short. "You deserve to know. I'm expecting a child. Yours. I'm not asking for anything. But I won't lie by hiding it. Do with that truth whatever you choose. Elira. She mailed it directly to his company's headquarters. She never heard back. Not that week. Not that month. So she made a choice. She packed 2 suitcases, ended her lease, and left the city without telling anyone. She didn't cry when the bus pulled away from the Port Authority terminal. She'd cried enough already. She landed in Raleigh, North Carolina, a place she'd never been, but that felt far enough from everything she didn't want to remember. She found a tiny room above a diner, took a job at a senior care home. A woman there, Miss Dolores, taught her how to braid hair, taught her how to stretch a dollar, taught her how to breathe again. Elira's belly grew slowly. Her heart didn't. Not at first, but every time she felt the flutter beneath her ribs, she remembered that night. That quiet kiss, that moment in the dark where she finally felt seen. She let that be enough. 9 months later, she gave birth to a little girl with quiet eyes and the kind of gaze that didn't belong to babies. Eyes that watched first, spoke second. Eyes that reminded Elira of the man who never wrote back. She named her Soraya, because even if she'd been silenced, her daughter wouldn't be. Soraya would grow up hearing the truth, even if no one else had the courage to say it. Elira didn't take a single picture of Soraya in the hospital, not because she wasn't proud, but because she was afraid the moment she froze it in time, the weight of what was missing would crash down. There was no one waiting outside the maternity wing. No flowers, no balloons, no father pacing the hallway. Just her, and that tiny, wide-eyed baby who wouldn't stop looking at her like she already knew too much. Soraya rarely cried. She studied, she stared, her little fists curled near her face, but she never screamed the way other babies did. Elira would sometimes wake up in a panic, thinking something was wrong, only to find Soraya quietly awake, blinking at the ceiling fan like it held secrets. By the time she was 1, Soraya had mastered the silent stare that made people uncomfortable. "You're raising a little judge," Miss Dolores teased once, bouncing the baby on her knee. "She's got that watch everything before she speaks energy, just like her daddy, whoever he was." Elira's breath caught at that. She never answered. Raleigh gave her room to breathe. The senior care home paid enough for food, rent, and second-hand clothes. A local moms group gave her a used crib, toys, and a stroller with a wobbly wheel. Her co-workers covered for her on daycare pickup days. She never mentioned Ronan, not once, but every time Soraya squinted at something too long, every time her brow furrowed just so, Elira saw him. Even in a child's body, the resemblance was quiet, but precise. When Soraya turned 2, she spoke her first sentence. "No, I'm thinking." Elira laughed so hard she cried. By age 4, Soraya asked where babies came from. By 5, she asked the question Elira had feared most. "Why don't I have a daddy like other kids?" They were folding laundry in their tiny living room. A cartoon played in the background, muted. The question hung heavier than anything Elira had ever lifted. She didn't lie. She never had. "He was someone I knew," Elira said gently. "He didn't stay. Did he know I was coming?" Elira hesitated. "I told him." "A long time ago. Did he say anything?" Elira folded a towel. "No, baby. He didn't." Soraya was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think I still want to meet him one day." Elira felt her chest ache. "Okay," she whispered. "Maybe you will." That night, Elira took out the only copy of the photo she'd printed. It was grainy, taken from a magazine interview article. Ronan, sitting on a stage during a tech summit. Sharp navy suit, still eyes, expression like stone. She didn't keep it for longing. She kept it for Soraya. One day, her daughter might want to know where her eyes came from. Years passed quietly. Soraya entered public school, skipped 2nd grade. She wasn't just smart, she was intuitive. Her teachers loved her. But sometimes they pulled Elira aside and asked, "Is her father in the picture?" Elira would nod gently. "No, just me." One rainy afternoon, much like the one Elira remembered all too well. She picked Soraya up from school, umbrella tilted against the wind. The little girl climbed into the back seat and pulled out her latest project. "I got invited to a special city program," she said, "for kids who test above grade level." Elira smiled. "That's amazing. It's in Manhattan." Elira froze. "It's only 3 months," Soraya said, reading her face. "But I want to go. I think I might find answers there." Elira gripped the steering wheel tightly. "Okay," she said quietly. "We'll figure it out." That night, after Soraya went to bed, Elira sat at the small kitchen table in their newer, slightly better apartment. It was still small, but there was light now. A rug Soraya picked. A couch that didn't sink in the middle. Elira opened her laptop and typed the words she swore she'd never type again. Ronan Travaux contact. His company appeared instantly. Still thriving. Still at the top of every search result. She clicked, scrolled, hesitated. Then, with trembling hands, she wrote one final message. "You may not remember me, but I never forgot you. Her name is Soraya. She is everything I never expected, and all that's left of the night you never acknowledged. I am not asking for money, or apology, or even your presence. But you deserve to know." Attached is one photo. Her eyes will tell you everything else. Elira. She attached a picture of Soraya from her last school performance, dressed in navy blue, hair tucked back, hands folded neatly, and eyes that mirrored his exactly. She hit send, and let the silence return. The flight to New York was short, but Elira felt it stretch endlessly. Soraya sat pressed against the window, tiny fingers tracing the cloud edges, eyes wide with excitement and something else. Anticipation Elira couldn't name. Her daughter's gifted program had accepted her after months of testing. The program promised advanced classes, mentorship, and a chance to grow beyond the confines of the small Raleigh school. It was an opportunity Elira couldn't refuse. Not for her daughter. "Are we going to live in a skyscraper?" Soraya asked, pressing her nose to the window. Rain had started again, soft at first, then steady. The streets below glistened like wet silver. Elira smiled faintly. "No, not a skyscraper. But there's a nice apartment waiting." Soraya tapped her fingers on the window, eyes narrowing in thought. "Do you think he lives here, Daddy?" she asked, voice small but curious. Elira's breath caught. "Daddy," she repeated in her head. Not aloud. "Let's talk about that later," she said softly, keeping her voice calm. "You have so many new things to see first." Soraya hummed, unconvinced. By the time they reached Manhattan, the city was alive in a way Raleigh never could be. Streets crowded, horns blaring, neon lights reflected in puddles. Every sound and movement pressed against Elira's senses, reminding her of a city she had left behind, leaving her memories tucked like secret letters under her pillow. The apartment she had found was modest compared to Ronan's penthouse. 2 bedrooms, sunlight spilling across the hardwood floors. The kind of place where she could breathe, where Soraya could play safely, where she could start over. Elira unpacked quietly, letting Soraya explore each corner, testing the echoes of her voice, the angle of the light, the sound of the city through the windows. It wasn't long before Soraya began asking more questions. "Mom, do you think Daddy would like me?" Elira froze mid-unpack. I think he would." Soraya tilted her head. "Did he know I was coming?" Elira bit her lip. "I told him," she whispered, almost to herself. "A long time ago." Soraya blinked. "And he didn't answer?" Elira shook her head slowly. "No, baby. He didn't." Soraya crossed her arms, lips pressed together. "I think I want to meet him." Elira felt a pang. She had imagined this moment countless times, but never this direct, never with her daughter insisting. "Okay," she said carefully. "Maybe one day you will." In the weeks that followed, Elira settled into the rhythm of Manhattan life. Soraya thrived in her program, eager, sharp, unafraid. Every time she answered a question correctly or impressed a teacher, Elira saw a reflection of someone she once knew. Someone who looked exactly like the man who had vanished from her life years ago. Soraya's resemblance to Ronan became impossible to ignore. Her eyes, dark, alert, analytical, followed patterns and details with uncanny precision. Her expressions, subtle gestures, and quiet moments of observation were all reminders of what Elira had carried with her for years. One afternoon, Soraya attended a small gathering with the program, a mix of students, parents, and visiting mentors. The children were encouraged to ask questions, share ideas, and explore a miniature innovation fair set up in a local auditorium. Soraya, curious and fearless, wandered into one of the rooms on her own. She moved quietly between tables, examining inventions, robots, and tiny tech displays. Her little fingers traced the edges of tablets, gears, and circuits. Her attention was sharp, unusually so for a child her age. And then she saw him. Across the room, behind a sleek glass table, stood a man. Tall, impeccably dressed, dark hair, sharper eyes. His presence commanded attention, not aggressively, but inherently. The way he held himself made everything else seem small in comparison. Soraya froze, her gaze locked on him. There was something about him, everything about him, familiar. She stepped closer, curiosity outweighing caution. Elira, standing at the door, followed the line of her daughter's gaze. Her heart skipped. She squinted, her breath catching. That face, those eyes. Ronan Treveau, alive, in the same city, in the same room. Soraya, oblivious to the storm she was about to unleash, walked straight up to him. "Are you my daddy?" she asked. The room froze. Conversations halted mid-sentence. Laptops hovered over keyboards. Parents turned, eyes widening. Ronan blinked, disbelief registering first, then shock. Elira ran toward them, panic rising in her chest. But Ronan had already moved. He stepped forward slowly, clearing the area with a gesture of his hand. Staff and visitors moved back without question. The tall, composed billionaire knelt before her daughter. "She's mine," he whispered to no one but himself. Elira's voice caught in her throat. "I tried to tell you," she said softly, almost a whisper, but loud enough for him to hear. Ronan's gaze lifted, meeting hers. Shock and recognition warred across his face, but he remained silent. Soraya, unaware of the tension between the adults, smiled slightly. "My name is Soraya," she said. The sound of her name seemed to break something in Ronan. For the first time in years he blinked rapidly, swallowing hard. Everything he had built suddenly felt small. Ronan knelt before Soraya, his hands hovering near her shoulders but not quite touching. He searched her face as if memorizing every line, every curve, every glimmer in her dark eyes. Elira arrived at his side, heart pounding. The sight of him, tall, sharp, precise, made something deep inside her tremble. "He's real," Soraya said softly, looking between them. Her little hands clasped in front of her, unsure whether to reach or retreat. Ronan's voice was barely above a whisper. You're mine." Soraya blinked, then nodded. "I knew it." Elira swallowed hard, tears pricking at the corner of her eyes. "I never lied," she said. "I told you once. But life went on. We didn't have a choice then." Ronan lifted his gaze, meeting hers fully now. Something unspoken passed between them, a mix of regret, longing, and relief. "Where's she been?" he asked softly, turning to Soraya. "With me," Elira said. "All this time. I raised her alone." His eyes widened slightly, absorbing every word. Then he nodded, slowly. "And you didn't reach out before?" "I tried," she whispered, "but no one answered, and I didn't want to force you into something you weren't ready for." Ronan's hands finally brushed Soraya's hair back, gentle, careful. "I wasn't ready for what I didn't know existed. And now I do." Soraya giggled quietly, a soft sound that seemed to melt some of the tension. She stepped closer to him, stretching her arms up. Ronan lifted her, holding her close, feeling the weight of the years lost. Her little body fit perfectly against his chest, as if she had been made for this exact embrace. Elira watched silently, her own heart swelling. The child who had been her anchor and joy was now bridging the space between two people who had once been separated by pride and circumstance. Over the next few days, the three of them began to form a fragile rhythm. Ronan didn't ask for proof, DNA tests, explanations. He only wanted to see her, to know her, to learn the child who had grown without him. He took Soraya to bookstores, museums, and parks. He taught her logic puzzles and coding basics. Small things, but each moment was a step toward building trust. Elira stayed cautious. She had watched him from afar all these years, and the thought of giving him access again felt both terrifying and necessary. Soraya thrived. Her laughter filled the apartment in ways it hadn't before. She learned quickly, her mind sharp and observant, mirroring her father's focus. Elira saw it every day, the way Soraya tilted her head, considered her words, and analyzed the world around her. Ronan noticed too. One afternoon, while teaching Soraya a chess strategy, he glanced at Elira. "She's incredible," he said quietly. "She's yours," Elira replied, her voice calm but tender. "I should have been here," he admitted. She shook her head. "You weren't ready. We both survived it anyway." Evenings became moments of quiet negotiation. Ronan would appear at the apartment, sometimes with takeout or small gifts for Soraya. He never demanded attention from Elira. He waited, patient, respectful. Elira began to notice little changes. He laughed more easily. He listened more. And slowly, subtly, she saw him trying. Not to erase the past, but to honor the life they could still have together. One night, as rain tapped softly against the window, Ronan lingered in the doorway long after Soraya had gone to bed. "I don't know how to start over," he admitted. "You don't have to," Elira said. "You just have to be present." He nodded. "I want to. Every day." And for the first time in years, Elira believed him. Soraya, of course, had her own way of accelerating the bond. One morning, she crawled into Ronan's lap without hesitation. "Daddy," she said simply. Ronan froze, then smiled. A real, full smile. The kind of smile reserved for moments that change a man's world. Elira stood nearby, hands folded, watching the child who had brought them back together. In that moment, it didn't matter that they had lost years. It didn't matter that life had been unfair. What mattered was here, now. The days that followed were filled with small victories. Ronan learned to navigate life with a child in it. Soraya adjusted to having him around. Elira grew stronger, realizing that the man she had once loved was different now. Softer, present, and genuinely committed to the family they were slowly forming. There were awkward moments, misunderstandings, silences that stretched too long. But there were also giggles, bedtime stories, and quiet dinners where all three of them simply existed together, filling the empty spaces of years lost. Elira often caught Ronan watching Soraya, just watching, silently measuring how the child had grown. And she understood, because that was exactly what she had done, all those years alone. The streets of Manhattan were loud, bright, and relentless. Elira gripped Soraya's hand as they exited the taxi, the little girl's eyes wide with both excitement and curiosity. The gifted program had arranged for a tour of the advanced classrooms, tech labs, and mentorship rooms. It was everything Soraya had dreamed of, and more. Elira took a deep breath. This was the moment she had both anticipated and feared. "Are you ready, Soraya?" she asked softly. Soraya nodded, her small fingers gripping hers tightly. "I think so." The program coordinator, a woman with sharp glasses and a quick smile, welcomed them warmly. Soraya was whisked off into a room filled with other children, each one eager to test their abilities, showcase their projects, or solve the complex problems waiting on tablets and whiteboards. Elira followed at a distance, letting her daughter explore, but never letting her out of sight. She thought about how much had changed since she left New York years ago. She had built a quiet, controlled life in Raleigh, a life where she could protect Soraya, shield her from a world that could be harsh and unpredictable. And yet, part of her knew this opportunity, this exposure, was necessary. Soraya deserved to grow, to learn, to know her potential. By mid-morning, Soraya had completed 3 problem-solving exercises, impressed the instructors, and caught the attention of one of the visiting mentors. Elira stood at the back of the room, quietly proud, when a commotion at the far side of the hall drew her attention. A tall man in a tailored navy suit had entered the room. His presence was magnetic, calm, controlled, commanding attention without a word. Elira's chest tightened. Ronan Treveau. He had returned to New York weeks ago. She had heard through a discreet source, but she hadn't expected to see him here. Now, in the same hallway, observing the very place her daughter was about to start a journey she had barely imagined. Soraya, curious and fearless as always, noticed him immediately. Elira's stomach dropped. The little girl's steps slowed. She turned toward him, eyes narrowing slightly. Recognition sparked. "Mom," Soraya whispered, tugging at Elira's hand. "I see him," Elira said, her voice barely audible. She tried to steady herself. Ronan knelt slightly to meet the children's eye level. He didn't speak yet, only observed. Every movement deliberate, every glance intentional. Soraya broke free from Elira's hand, walking toward him slowly. The other students gave her space, sensing the weight of the moment. Elira followed quickly, panic rising, heart hammering. "Daddy?" Soraya asked, small but clear. The room froze. All conversation halted. Mentors, parents and students turned to watch, unsure how to react. Ronan's expression shifted rapidly. Shock, disbelief, then recognition. He moved toward her, clearing a path through the room with just a subtle gesture. Elira arrived at his side, chest heaving. I told you," she said quietly. Ronan's gaze remained on Soraya, and for a moment, he didn't respond. "She's yours," he whispered to himself. Soraya, oblivious to the tension, smiled faintly. "I knew it." Ronan knelt before her, finally close. His hands hovered for a moment, before settling lightly on her small shoulders. Elira watched, unsure whether to step forward or stay back. The years of absence weighed heavily in the air. Every unspoken word, every lost opportunity, every moment they hadn't shared, compressed into this one silent encounter. Over the next few minutes he spoke softly to Soraya, learning her name, her likes, her favorite subjects. He asked questions without pressing too much. His presence was gentle but firm, a balance Elira had never seen before. And Soraya responded naturally. She didn't hesitate. She explained her projects. She laughed quietly at his subtle jokes. Elira felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. Relief because Ronan had not recoiled. Fear because the dynamic of her life, her carefully built life, was shifting irrevocably. After the program concluded for the morning, Elira suggested they get lunch. Ronan looked at her. "I should probably stay," he said, hesitating. "I'm expected at a meeting in a few minutes." Elira shook her head. "You're with her. She needs this. You need this." He paused, then nodded slowly, as though her words had unlocked a decision he'd been hesitant to make. They walked to a nearby cafe. Soraya skipped ahead, chattering about what she had learned, and Ronan listened quietly, occasionally interjecting with a thoughtful question. Elira observed him, noting how careful he was, how present he appeared. He had changed. The man who once had been distant, guarded, and unreachable was now approachable, tentative, but wholly engaged. That evening, Elira tucked Soraya into bed. "Did you have fun today?" she asked. "Best day ever," Soraya said, smiling. "And Daddy stayed with me the whole time." Elira's heart ached and swelled at once. She kissed her daughter's forehead, trying to steady herself. After Soraya fell asleep, Elira sat by the window, looking out at the city lights. Her phone vibrated with a discreet message. "From Ronan. She's incredible. You did well raising her. I didn't realize how much I missed." Elira smiled faintly, typing a short reply. "Thank you. She deserves everything." The reply remained on the screen, words short but weighted. She placed the phone aside and leaned back, letting the sound of the city settle around her. Life was changing again, slowly, unpredictably, but this time She felt ready to meet it, not alone. The next morning, Manhattan seemed quieter than usual. Fog hung low over the streets, softening the glare of the streetlights. Soraya, already awake and alert, tugged on Elira's sleeve. "Mom, Daddy promised he'd come with us to the park today," she said. Elira swallowed. "Yes, he did." Soraya's excitement was contagious, but it carried a weight that Elira couldn't ignore. This wasn't just a casual outing. It was a test. For Soraya, for Ronan, and for the fragile thread that tied them all together. They met Ronan in the lobby of the apartment building. He was standing near the elevator, suit replaced by a more casual navy, sweater and slacks, his hair slightly tousled from the wind outside. There was a quiet intensity in his gaze as he watched Soraya approach. "Ready?" he asked, his voice soft but confident. Soraya nodded and ran toward him. He bent down, lifting her into his arms. Her small hands wrapped around his neck as she looked at him with unreserved trust. Elira followed behind, her chest tight with a mixture of relief and anxiety. Seeing them together stirred memories she had carefully tucked away, memories of the night she left, of the letters that were never answered, of a past she thought she had buried. The park was alive with children, joggers, and the occasional street performer. But for Soraya, the world had narrowed to the space between Ronan and Elira. Ronan held her hand as they walked, keeping a careful balance, never too distant, never hovering. He asked questions about her favorite subjects, listened to her answers, and laughed at the little jokes she made. Elira observed silently. She had known this man was capable of warmth, but seeing him step into the role of a parent, hesitant, careful, yet entirely present, was both terrifying and comforting. By noon, they settled on a bench near the playground. Soraya wanted to try the climbing frame. "Stay close," Elira called, though she knew he would watch her. "I've got her," Ronan said, his tone firm but gentle. Soraya scrambled up, occasionally glancing back at him with a smile. He followed, helping only when necessary, letting her navigate the obstacles on her own while offering steady guidance. Elira sat beside the bench, noting every small movement, every quiet interaction. She realized how much time had been lost, how many moments she and Soraya had experienced alone, and how much Ronan needed to make up for silently. Lunch followed at a small cafe nearby. Ronan insisted on ordering, carefully accommodating Soraya's preferences. He smiled at her when she spoke, nodded attentively, and offered Elira a glance that said, without words, "I see you too." The gesture was simple, but it carried decades of unspoken emotion. After lunch, they walked back to the apartment. Soraya skipped ahead, her energy unstoppable. "Daddy, can we read together tonight?" she asked eagerly. Ronan looked at Elira before answering. "Absolutely. If she wants it, I want it too." Elira felt a lump in her throat. The words were small, but they carried meaning. For the first time in years, she felt like he was actively choosing to be present, not just observing from a distance. Back at the apartment, the quiet moments became the most significant. Ronan helped Soraya with her homework, guiding her through logic puzzles, teaching her patterns and problem-solving. Elira watched as her daughter flourished under his attention, his patience a stark contrast to the distant man he had once been. They shared small conversations. Ronan asked questions about Soraya's favorite books, her projects and her friends. Elira offered input only when necessary, allowing him to form his own bond with their daughter. By evening, dinner was a calm, shared ritual. The three of them sat around the small dining table. Soraya chatted happily, occasionally looking at Ronan for affirmation. He responded, not with commands or corrections, but with encouragement. "You're doing amazing, Soraya," he said. "I can see why you love puzzles so much." Her grin was contagious. Elira felt herself relax slightly, seeing them connect so naturally. After dinner, Soraya insisted on reading a story. She climbed onto Ronan's lap with a book she had chosen herself. He followed each word carefully, enunciating, turning pages deliberately. Elira watched quietly, heart swelling. Every laugh, every whispered question, Every thoughtful pause reinforced the fragile bond they were forming. Ronan didn't notice her watching. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was simply present, fully, without ego or expectation. And in that presence, Illyra began to see the man she had once loved. Not perfect, but changed, aware, and willing to be part of the life they had never imagined together. Later that night, Illyra sat by the window, Soraya asleep in her small bed. The city lights shimmered in the distance, and the sounds of Manhattan drifted up softly. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ronan. "She's incredible. I didn't realize how much I missed this." Illyra typed back carefully. "Thank you. She deserves everything." She placed the phone aside, breathing in the quiet. The world outside had changed. Their lives had shifted in ways neither could have planned. But for the first time in years, Illyra felt a quiet hope. A possibility that the future could be different. Not perfect, not easy, but full. And sometimes that was enough. The program had organized a small citywide innovation expo. Parents were invited, but many, like Illyra, stayed at a distance. She wanted Soraya to navigate the space with curiosity, not under her constant watch. Soraya, naturally fearless, wandered slightly ahead, taking in the displays. Miniature robots, science experiments, and interactive coding demonstrations. Her sharp eyes darted between stations, analyzing each contraption, memorizing patterns, testing small hypotheses under her breath. Illyra followed a few steps behind, hands clasped tightly, feeling a sense of anxious anticipation she hadn't experienced since leaving New York years ago. Every step brought memories of the life she had left behind. The night she walked out of Ronan's penthouse. The letters never answered, and the tiny human who now walked so confidently ahead of her. And then she saw him. Ronan Treveau. He was standing behind a sleek glass table, observing a small group of young students, his sharp eyes scanning every movement, every word. He was dressed in a dark tailored suit, hair perfectly in place, posture commanding without effort. Illyra froze. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. The same man who had haunted her thoughts for years now stood inches away, in the very building where her daughter was discovering her own world. Soraya's attention, however, was immediate. She walked slowly toward him, curious, confident, unafraid. Her little frame moved with purpose. Illyra's heart pounded. "Mom?" Soraya whispered, tugging lightly on Illyra's sleeve. "I see him," Illyra murmured, keeping her voice low, careful. "Stay calm." The little girl ignored her. She stopped a few feet from Ronan, looked up at him and asked with the innocence of a child who had waited long but never forgotten, "Are you my daddy?" The room froze. Conversations halted. Laptops hovered mid-air. Mentors, parents and students all turned to witness the moment. Ronan blinked. The words landed on him with the force of years compressed into one single vulnerable inquiry. Shock, disbelief, and recognition collided in his expression. Illyra ran forward, chest tight, afraid of what might happen next. Her mind raced. Would he reject them? Turn away? Pretend it never happened? But before she could reach Soraya, Ronan moved. He extended his hands slightly, letting the crowd part. Teachers, mentors, and visiting parents stepped aside without question. It was as if his presence alone demanded space. He knelt before Soraya, his tall frame bending to meet her at eye level. The gesture was careful, deliberate. He wanted this to be right. "She's mine," he whispered, almost to himself, but loud enough for Illyra to hear. Illyra's voice caught in her throat. "I tried to tell you," she said softly. Ronan's eyes lifted to meet hers. Shock and emotion warred across his face, but he stayed silent. Soraya, unbothered by the tension, smiled slightly. "My name is Soraya," she said. Ronan's chest tightened. He blinked rapidly, memorizing her small hands, her dark eyes, the unmistakable reflection of the years he had missed. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, Ronan spoke. I didn't know, not fully. I wasn't prepared." Illyra shook her head gently. "You weren't. None of us were. But she's here now and you are too. That's all that matters. Soraya's little fingers curled around his hand. He felt the warmth and the trust, and something in him shifted. I've lost years, he admitted quietly. I never should have left. You didn't leave her, Elira said. She was never yours to lose completely. You missed moments, yes, but you're here now. Ronan looked down at his daughter. I want to be part of her life, if you'll let me. Elira exhaled, a mixture of relief and fear. She wasn't sure how much she could trust him yet, but seeing him here, kneeling before Soraya, seeing her without pretense, she allowed herself a sliver of hope. For the remainder of the morning, the three of them formed a careful, tentative rhythm. Ronan asked Soraya questions about the program, her favorite classes, the experiments she liked, what she wanted to learn next. He listened to every word, validating her enthusiasm and curiosity. Elira watched silently, noting the changes in him. The man who once avoided intimacy, who had distanced himself emotionally, was now fully engaged with their daughter. Patient, attentive, present. Soraya, in turn, responded naturally. She was not shy, nor intimidated. She spoke, laughed, and asked questions. Her little hand often found his, and he held it without hesitation. Elira felt a lump in her throat. For years she had carried the weight of raising Soraya alone, protecting her, guiding her. And now, seeing them together, she realized that some bonds could not be broken, not even by absence. By afternoon, the program concluded. Soraya and Elira walked hand in hand to a nearby cafe. Ronan followed behind, giving them space, yet staying close enough to remain part of their world. You were incredible today, he said quietly to Soraya as they sat down. Thanks, Daddy, she said. Elira's heart skipped a beat. Hearing the words, seeing the trust in Soraya's eyes, she felt both relief and fear. Relief that Ronan had embraced her daughter immediately. Fear that their own unresolved history might complicate what was just beginning. Ronan caught her gaze. She's amazing, he said, almost to himself. She is, Elira replied, and she deserves everything we can give her. After lunch, they returned to their apartment. Soraya was brimming with excitement, eager to show Ronan the projects she had completed. He knelt at her level, examining her work carefully, asking thoughtful questions, and offering guidance without overstepping. Elira watched in quiet admiration. The man she had once loved, the man who had vanished for years, was here, fully present, carefully learning the rhythm of a family he had almost missed. By the time evening fell, they had established a tentative routine, meals together, homework together, small conversations, and moments of quiet presence. Elira knew that trust would take time, that boundaries needed to be negotiated, that the scars of the past would not fade overnight. But for the first time in years, she felt a sense of hope, a future where Soraya could have both parents present, a life where she could love again, slowly, carefully, without fear. After lunch, they returned to the apartment in quiet anticipation. Soraya raced ahead, eager to show Ronan the projects she had been working on since arriving in Manhattan. Each one was a reflection of her curiosity and intelligence, a testament to the care Elira had poured into her upbringing. Ronan followed closely, a mixture of awe and cautious excitement in his eyes. He carried himself differently now, not the distant billionaire she remembered, but a man learning how to participate in a world he had once been absent from. Soraya, oblivious to the weight of the day, laid out her small inventions and neatly organized worksheets on the living room table. Her little hands moved confidently, pointing out the patterns and problems she had solved. Look, Daddy, this is the algorithm I made for the maze robot, she exclaimed. Ronan knelt beside her, studying her work intently. Incredible, he said. You solved it faster than I expected. Did you think of any alternate solutions? Soraya nodded eagerly and explained her process. She gestured with her small hands, her eyes bright. Ronan listened, asking thoughtful questions, offering praise without overshadowing her accomplishments. Elira stood at the side, silently watching. He glanced at Elira, his gaze softening. She's exceptional, he murmured. Yes, Elira agreed, smiling faintly. And she deserves everything we can give her. Ronan nodded, absorbing the weight of her words. I intend to, he said simply. For the first time, Illyra felt the enormity of his commitment, not as a stranger who had returned, but as a father learning to be present for a child who had been raised without him. Later that evening, Ronan offered to help with dinner. Illyra hesitated at first, unsure how much of her personal space she was willing to let him occupy. I can do it, she said softly. He shook his head. I want to, he said. Let me. Together, they prepared a simple meal. Soraya giggled as Ronan attempted to flip pancakes, nearly dropping one onto the floor. Illyra laughed quietly, the sound unfamiliar to her in years but comforting. It was a small domestic moment, yet it carried immense weight. Each laugh, each careful movement, each shared glance reinforced the fragile new rhythm they were establishing together. After dinner, Soraya insisted on a bedtime story. She climbed onto Ronan's lap without hesitation. He read slowly, carefully, his voice calm and patient, ensuring every word was understood. Illyra watched silently, her heart swelling. She realized something profound. This was what she had wanted all along. Not a perfect family, not a flawless life, but a man who would stand beside her and Soraya with genuine presence and care. Ronan's hand rested lightly on Soraya's small shoulder. I missed so much, he admitted quietly, almost to himself. You didn't miss everything, Illyra said softly. You're here now. That counts. He nodded, his gaze lingering on her. For the first time in years, there was no pretense, no distance, just acknowledgement, honesty, and quiet understanding. The following days fell into a tentative, comforting routine. Ronan arrived at the apartment at predictable times, never imposing but always present. He attended Soraya's classes occasionally, guided her through projects, and gently encouraged her interests. Illyra allowed herself to observe without interference, realizing that his consistent presence was beginning to heal old wounds. Soraya thrived. Her laughter echoed through the apartment, a constant reminder of why Illyra had endured years of solitude and struggle. Every accomplishment she shared with Ronan reinforced their bond and slowly built trust. One afternoon, while Soraya worked on a complex puzzle, Ronan turned to Illyra. She's extraordinary, he said quietly. You raised her beautifully. You didn't raise her alone, Illyra interrupted softly. We raised her together. In different ways, but we did it. He paused, absorbing her words. I know, he admitted, and I intend to do my part from now on, every day. The sincerity in his voice left no room for doubt. Illyra felt a mixture of relief and cautious hope. That evening, after Soraya had gone to bed, Illyra and Ronan sat together on the small balcony of the apartment. The city lights flickered beneath them, reflecting off puddles and rain-slicked streets. I didn't know how to be present before, Ronan said, voice low. I was afraid of what it meant to have responsibility, to care so deeply. You've learned now, Illyra said gently. Yes, he admitted, but it's harder than I thought, and easier, in ways I never expected. She leaned slightly toward him, feeling the distance shrink. Some things aren't about ease. They're about commitment and consistency. He nodded. I can do that. I will do that. For her, for you, for this. She studied him for a long moment, reading the determination, the sincerity, the change. For the first time she believed it. The days that followed were marked by small shared moments that slowly built the foundation of their new life. Ronan helped Soraya with her projects, attended parent-teacher meetings, and shared meals without needing to dominate the space. Illyra allowed herself to step back at times, giving him space to parent, while she observed how naturally he adapted to the role. By night, they shared quiet conversations about the past, the mistakes, and the future they might have. There were no accusations, no recriminations, only acknowledgement and a mutual desire to move forward. And through it all, Soraya's presence made everything possible. Her laughter, curiosity, and unwavering trust served as the bridge between the past and the future, forcing Ronan and Illyra to confront their feelings while centering their focus on the little girl who had unknowingly united them again. Elira felt a mixture of relief, hope, and careful excitement. Life was still fragile. The wounds of the past hadn't disappeared, but for the first time in years, she saw the possibility of love, not rushed, not forced, but present and real. The mornings in Manhattan were brisk, carrying the energy of the city awake. Soraya was already at the breakfast table, crayons scattered beside her workbook, quietly humming a tune she had made up herself. Ronan arrived moments later, holding 2 steaming cups of tea. His footsteps were soft, careful, as though he was entering a space he wanted to honor, not dominate. "Good morning," he said, placing 1 cup in front of Elira. "Morning," she replied, voice calm, steady. Soraya looked up from her drawings. "Daddy," she said with excitement, running toward him. He scooped her into his arms, careful not to spill the tea. His hands lingered lightly on her back, steadying, protective. She buried her face against his shoulder, whispering about the day ahead. Elira watched, a warmth spreading across her chest. These were the moments she had hoped for, not grand gestures or elaborate. Promises, but quiet consistency, a presence felt rather than declared. After breakfast, they prepared for Soraya's school program. Ronan helped gather materials, organizing her notebooks, pencils, and art supplies. "You've got everything you need?" he asked Soraya, checking her backpack. "Yes," she said promptly, zipping it closed. "I'm ready." Ronan glanced at Elira, silently seeking confirmation. She nodded. "I'll drop her off," he said. "I want to make sure she settles in." Elira hesitated. She wasn't used to letting him take such initiative. The man who had once left her and their child alone was now insisting on participating in her daughter's life. "Okay," she said softly, "but be careful." The walk to the school was calm. Ronan maintained a gentle hand on Soraya's back as she chatted about her classes, the friends she had made, and the new projects she was excited to tackle. He asked questions, carefully listening. No dominance, no instruction, simply presence. At one point, Soraya pointed to a puzzle she had worked on the night before. "Look, Daddy, I solved it faster than last time." Ronan knelt beside her, examining her work. "Impressive," he said. "Do you want to try a more challenging version?" "Yes," Soraya exclaimed. Elira watched from the doorway as he guided her through the new challenge. She felt a subtle shift within herself. For the first time, she realized that this man, once distant, cold, and unreachable, was capable of being present, patient, and nurturing. That afternoon, after Soraya had settled into her classroom, Ronan and Elira walked slowly back to the apartment. "You're doing well," Elira said quietly. He glanced at her, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "So are you," he replied. "All this time, I never understood how much it takes to raise someone like her alone." Elira shook her head. "You don't have to understand everything. Just being here counts." He nodded, absorbing her words. "I intend to be here." The sincerity in his tone made her chest tighten. It wasn't a promise she could rely on completely, but it was a start. That evening, Ronan joined them for dinner. He didn't rush conversations or try to impress. He asked simple questions, complimented Soraya on her achievements, and thanked Elira for preparing the meal. For the first time in years, Elira felt a sense of shared rhythm. They existed together without pretense. The past was heavy, yes, but it didn't dominate the room. Soraya laughed freely, slipping into the space between them like a bridge that spanned the years of absence. Ronan's gaze lingered on his daughter, his expression unreadable but softened. He didn't speak for a while, letting her talk, letting Elira observe, letting himself feel. Later, after Soraya had gone to bed, Elira and Ronan sat together. In the living room, the city lights flickering through the windows. "You've changed," Elira said softly. "I have," he admitted. "I had to, for her, for you, for this." She studied him. The man before her was no longer the distant, calculating figure she had once known. He was present, careful, aware. "I'm learning," he said, as if reading her thoughts. "I don't want to make the same mistakes again." Elira nodded. I can see that. They sat in quiet for a long moment. The city hummed beneath them, the distant sounds of traffic and pedestrians a gentle reminder of the world outside their apartment. The next morning brought the routine of school again. Ronan insisted on accompanying Soraya, watching her engage with peers, guiding her when needed, and observing without interfering. Elira found herself taking small steps back, letting him take the lead. She watched as her daughter thrived under his attention, recognizing how much. Her presence had allowed Ronan to step into a role he had once avoided. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward pauses, moments of doubt, and subtle friction from old habits. But there was progress, and in that progress, Elira felt hope, careful, measured hope, that the family they had almost lost could exist now, fully and deliberately. Evenings became shared moments. Homework sessions, quiet dinners, and walks around the city became anchors in their lives. Ronan never imposed, never demanded, only participated, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, Elira began to let him in. Not fully yet, but enough to notice the subtle shifts in his behavior, the softness in his voice, the patience in his interactions, the care in his actions, all signs of a man learning to love again. Soraya thrived in the middle of it, bridging the gap between the past and the present. Her laughter, curiosity, and unrestrained affection forced Ronan and Elira to navigate emotions they had long avoided. That night, Elira watched Ronan quietly read to Soraya from her favorite bedtime story. His voice was steady, calm, and attentive. Soraya rested against him, completely at ease. Elira felt a surge of gratitude. This was what she had wanted all along, a man present in their lives fully, aware of his responsibilities, slowly reclaiming the space he had abandoned. It was imperfect, it was slow, but it was real. For the first time in years, Elira allowed herself to imagine a future where they could all exist together, not in the past, not in the dreams she had held alone, but in the reality they were building now. The following days settled into a fragile routine. Ronan appeared consistently at the apartment, never imposing, always present. Breakfasts became shared moments, with Soraya chattering about her projects and school experiments while he listened intently, asking thoughtful questions. Elira watched quietly. She noticed how careful he had become, how he gave Soraya space to speak, how he allowed the little girl to express herself without interruption. He was patient in ways he had never been before. Soraya thrived. Every day she came home bubbling with stories, and Ronan listened. He celebrated small victories, the puzzles she solved, the experiments that worked, the friendships she was forming. Elira felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, because he had finally returned, fear, because opening herself again meant risking disappointment, and hope, because she saw a man willing to step fully into their lives. One afternoon, Soraya was working on a logic puzzle, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Need some help?" Ronan asked softly, leaning over. "No, I want to figure it out myself," she replied firmly. He smiled. "All right, but I'll be right here if you need me." Elira watched as he remained at her side without hovering. His presence was steady and reassuring, but not controlling. He had learned, somehow, to respect boundaries he once ignored. When Soraya solved the puzzle, she beamed. "Look, Daddy, I did it." Ronan clapped softly. "You did? Excellent work." Elira's eyes misted. The child she had raised alone for years now had a father who was attentive, proud, and engaged. Evenings became their quiet sanctuary. Ronan stayed for dinner, helping with preparations without taking over. He asked questions about Soraya's day, listened to her stories, and offered gentle guidance. After dinner, they often settled in the living room. Soraya curled up with a book, Ronan beside her, and Elira nearby, sipping tea and observing. Their conversations were simple but meaningful. Ronan shared stories about his childhood, carefully choosing words that would resonate with Soraya, while Elira remained quietly present, letting the moments unfold. One night, as Soraya slept, Ronan lingered in the doorway of her bedroom. "I don't know if I can fix the years I missed," he said softly. Elira leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You can't, but you can be here now." That's more important. He looked at her, the vulnerability in his eyes softening the hardness she had once feared. I want to do that. For her, for us, but I don't want to make the same mistakes. You won't, she replied quietly. Not if you keep being present, honest and patient. That's all anyone can ask of you. He nodded. I can do that. I will do that. The city outside pulsed quietly with life. Traffic hummed below, distant sirens sounded, and lights flickered through the windows. But inside the apartment, time felt different, slower, deliberate, and charged with the promise of something new. Ronan's attention to Soraya never waned. He helped her with schoolwork, accompanied her on walks, and included her in small daily routines. Illyra observed the transformation quietly, allowing herself to feel a cautious optimism. Each small victory built trust. Each laugh, each conversation, each quiet bedtime moment solidified the bond. One rainy afternoon, Soraya asked Ronan to help her with a coding project. She had spent weeks preparing and wanted to show him what she had learned. I want you to see it first, she said proudly. He knelt beside her, watching intently as she explained each line of code, each logic decision. He nodded, asked questions, and offered subtle guidance when necessary, letting her learn and explore independently. Illyra watched from the doorway, heart full. Seeing them together, her daughter confident, him patient, and herself as part of this dynamic, felt like a moment she had longed for in secret. Evenings became shared rituals. Homework, dinner, and bedtime stories established a rhythm. Ronan never overstepped. He respected boundaries, but his presence was consistent. Illyra began to notice how much she trusted him now, not blindly, but enough to see him as a partner, a father, and perhaps something more. The slow rebuilding of their life was delicate, but it was happening. On a quiet night, after Soraya had fallen asleep, Illyra and Ronan sat together. In the living room, city lights flickering through the windows. I never realized how much I missed this, he said softly. Illyra nodded. You're here now. That's what matters. Ronan's gaze lingered on her. I know. And I want to be here for both of you, consistently, patiently, fully. You are, she said, and for the first time she believed it. The man who had vanished years ago was finally present. Not perfect, not flawless, but committed. And sometimes that was enough. The following weeks passed in a rhythm of quiet anticipation. Ronan showed up with predictable consistency, never forcing his presence, but never absent when needed. Breakfasts, school drop-offs, evening homework sessions. Each small act reinforced his place in their lives. Soraya thrived under his attention. Every achievement, every curious question, every new idea was met with encouragement. Her little eyes mirrored the sharpness of his, and Illyra felt the weight of years lost and now reclaimed. Ronan's presence was steady. He asked questions without intruding, listened without judgment, and offered guidance without taking control. For the first time, Illyra noticed how natural he was with her daughter, how much patience he had learned in the years apart. One afternoon, after school, Soraya carried a small backpack filled with art supplies. Can we do a project together, Daddy? She asked, eager. Ronan knelt beside her, smiling. Absolutely. Let's see what you've got. Illyra watched quietly from the kitchen, a cup of tea warming her hands. She noticed how he guided Soraya's hands, encouraged her creativity, and celebrated her independence. There was no pretense, no pressure, only presence. Soraya laughed freely, enjoying the small collaboration. It was a simple moment, yet it carried the weight of a family beginning to reassemble. Later, Ronan suggested a walk around the neighborhood. The three of them strolled slowly, Soraya skipping ahead to examine anything that caught her attention. Ronan kept a careful hand on her back, letting her lead, but staying close enough to intervene if necessary. Illyra followed behind, heart steadying. She realized she no longer feared his presence. Instead, she felt a cautious relief. The man who had once vanished was now consistently showing up, learning how to be a father, and slowly proving himself trustworthy. By evening, dinner was a quiet, shared ritual. Soraya ate eagerly, discussing the day's projects, while Ronan offered insights without overshadowing her enthusiasm. Elira prepared the meal, watching them interact. She felt a warmth she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. The tension from the past was fading, replaced by the steady rhythm of family life slowly taking shape. Ronan glanced at her from across the table. "You've done an incredible job," he said softly. Elira met his gaze. "We've done this together," she said. He nodded, and for a moment, the unspoken acknowledgement of their shared journey hung in the air. After Soraya went to bed, Ronan lingered in the living room. "I've never been good at this," he admitted, his voice low. "At being part of a family. At showing up." "You are showing up," Elira said quietly. "Every day. That's more than I expected." He leaned back, studying her, and for a moment, the years of distance and silence seemed to dissolve. "I don't want to mess this up," he whispered. "You won't," she said. "As long as you keep being present, patient, honest, that's enough for now." The nights that followed became a quiet learning process. Ronan read bedtime stories to Soraya, helped with late-night homework, and participated in her small daily routines. Elira allowed herself to step back, observing him as he navigated fatherhood with care and attention. Small gestures, pouring a glass of water for Soraya, asking how her day went, praising her work, became monumental in the rhythm of their lives. Elira noticed subtle changes in herself too. She began to relax around him, to trust his intentions, to imagine a life where he was consistently present. One rainy evening, as the city lights reflected on slick sidewalks below, Ronan appeared at the apartment doorway with takeout. He stood quietly, hands full, waiting for her to notice him. Elira opened the door cautiously. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. "I wanted to," he replied. "For Soraya. For us." She stepped aside, letting him in. He placed the food on the counter and smiled. It was a simple gesture, but in it, she saw the sincerity of his intentions. They ate on the floor, quietly, watching Soraya set up her projects. The room was modest, the lights dim, the city glowing faintly through the windows. No words were needed. The moment itself was the statement. They were present. They were together. By the end of the week, the routine was solidifying. Ronan attended school events, celebrated Soraya's small victories, and participated without taking control. Elira noticed the subtle intimacy growing between them, not physical, not rushed, but present in quiet gestures. A hand lightly brushing against hers, a glance that lingered, the shared care for their child. Soraya, naturally, became the bridge between them. Her laughter, curiosity, and trust made it impossible for either adult to avoid the bond forming under their shared responsibility. Ronan, careful, patient, and committed, was learning how to love again, not recklessly but deliberately. Elira allowed herself to hope, not blindly, not without caution, but hope, nevertheless. That evening, the apartment was quiet, save for the soft hum of the city outside. Soraya had already gone to bed, tucked under her blankets with her favorite stuffed animal. Elira sat on the couch, nursing a cup of tea, feeling the weight of the day. The sight of Ronan helping Soraya navigate the school program, cheering her on for her projects and listening attentively to every word had stirred something she hadn't anticipated, a tentative trust, a cautious hope that perhaps he could be part of their lives consistently. Ronan remained standing in the doorway for a long moment, silently observing her. "May I sit?" he asked, voice low. "Careful." Elira nodded. He sank into the couch beside her, leaving a small but deliberate space between them. The air was thick with unspoken emotion, years of distance, absence, and uncertainty compressed into the silent room. "I never realized," he began, "how much I missed. Not just the milestones, not just the achievements, but the small moments, the little things." Elira looked at him, her expression softening. "We all carry what we missed, but it's never too late to start again." He exhaled slowly. "I've had years to think about what I lost, what I ignored, what I left behind. And now, seeing her, seeing you, I know what matters." Elira's chest tightened. She wanted to ask him if he truly meant it, but instead she simply nodded, letting his words sink between them. Over the next few days, they settled into a new rhythm. Ronan became more confident in his role as Soraya's father. He helped with her homework, guided her through experiments, and read bedtime stories. Each small act, each patient moment, was a demonstration of his commitment. Elira observed quietly. She noticed the subtle changes in herself, too, the way she allowed him to step in, to participate, to share responsibility. She felt the slow thawing of her guarded heart. Soraya, naturally, became the bridge between them. Her laughter, curiosity, and unabashed trust created a space where Ronan and Elira could interact without the shadows of the past overwhelming them. One evening, as they gathered in the living room after dinner, Soraya climbed onto Ronan's lap. "Daddy, can we read together?" she asked, eyes bright. "Of course," he replied, smiling down at her. Elira sat nearby, watching quietly. The sight of them together, father and daughter, so naturally connected, stirred a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in years. Ronan read with care, enunciating clearly, pausing to explain words and concepts, laughing gently at the parts Soraya found amusing. She listened intently, occasionally asking questions, which he answered thoughtfully. Elira's gaze lingered on him. The man who had once been distant, cold, and unapproachable had become attentive, patient, and tender. Later, once Soraya was asleep, Ronan lingered in the living room, careful not to disturb her. "I didn't know how to be a father," he admitted quietly. "I didn't know how to care without fear of failure." "You're learning," Elira said softly. "And she's thriving because of it." He looked at her, eyes searching. "I want to be here. For her. For you. For us." Elira studied him. The sincerity in his gaze, the quiet determination in his posture, left no room for doubt. "I believe that," she said, quietly but firmly. They sat in silence, the weight of the past balanced by the promise of the present. No grand declarations, no rushed confessions, just shared understanding, presence, and a cautious hope that their family could grow together. The following days were a mixture of small victories. Ronan attended parent-teacher meetings, helped with projects, and spent time with Soraya in ways that allowed her to flourish while slowly building trust with him. Elira began to notice subtle changes in their interactions, a hand lightly brushing against hers during a shared task, a glance that lingered longer than necessary, moments of quiet understanding, unspoken acknowledgement of shared responsibility, and slowly rekindled affection. Each small gesture reinforced the fragile trust forming between them. One rainy afternoon, as the city outside glimmered with reflections of neon lights, Ronan brought home a small gift for Soraya, a miniature science kit she had wanted. Her eyes lit up. "Daddy, you remembered. I pay attention," he said softly, smiling. Elira observed from the kitchen doorway, her heart swelling. The man who had once left them behind was now actively participating, thoughtful and attentive. He was learning how to love not just as a partner but as a father. It was slow, it was deliberate, and it was real. By night, they sat together on the small balcony of their apartment, Soraya asleep inside, the city quieting for a moment. "I don't want to make mistakes," Ronan said quietly. "I've missed too much already." "You won't," Elira replied. "As long as you keep being present, patient, and honest, that's enough." He looked at her, eyes soft. "I can do that. I will do that." And for the first time in years, Elira believed him. The man who had vanished from her life was finally here. Not perfect, not flawless, but fully committed. The mornings in Manhattan had taken on a new rhythm. Soraya jumped out of bed, bright and alert, already pulling on her sneakers for their planned weekend excursion. Ronan followed her with a small backpack slung over his shoulder, holding her lunch and a water bottle. Elira stood at the doorway, arms folded, watching the quiet choreography of their routine. It was different now. Not forced, not tentative, but natural, comfortable, and deliberate. "Are we really going to the Science Museum today?" Soraya asked, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Absolutely," Ronan replied, And I might learn a few things too. Elira smiled quietly, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't allowed herself to experience in years. The man who had once vanished from her life was now fully present, engaging in the everyday details of their lives and showing his love not through words alone, but through actions and care. The museum visit was filled with laughter, curiosity, and learning. Soraya ran from exhibit to exhibit, explaining her observations to both parents with a confidence that surprised and delighted Ronan. He listened intently, nodding and asking thoughtful questions, never overshadowing her enthusiasm. Elira followed, observing the interactions with a cautious optimism. She had spent years raising Soraya alone, protecting her, guiding her, and now she watched as the man she had once loved actively participated in her daughter's life. It was a slow, steady integration, and every small gesture strengthened her trust. At one point, Soraya stopped at a display of robotics. She looked up at Ronan. "Daddy, can we try this together?" He knelt beside her immediately. "Of course," he said. Together, they worked on the robot, Ronan guiding her hands when necessary, letting her take the lead whenever possible. Elira watched from a distance, heart swelling. The bond forming before her eyes was tangible, a bridge built slowly through trust, attention, and shared experiences. After the museum, they stopped for lunch at a small cafe nearby. Ronan insisted on ordering, carefully accommodating Soraya's preferences, while Elira observed quietly. She noticed the subtle ways he included her in decisions, consulted her opinions, and never dominated the conversation. "Mom, can Daddy help me with my science project tonight?" Soraya asked excitedly. "Yes," Elira said softly. "You two can work together." Ronan looked at Elira, his eyes softening. "I'll make sure it's fun," he promised. And for the first time in years, Elira believed him without hesitation. That evening, after Soraya had gone to bed, Ronan remained in the living room with Elira. The apartment was quiet, the city lights shimmering through the windows. "I never realized," he said, voice low, "how much I needed this. Not just to be part of her life, but to be part of yours too." Elira took a slow breath. "It's been a long journey," she said quietly. "We've both changed, and she's grown. But we're here now. That's what matters." He nodded. "I know, and I want to continue being present, every day for both of you." She studied him, seeing the sincerity, patience, and commitment in his eyes. The man who had once been distant, unreachable, and cold was now attentive, gentle, and engaged. The following days solidified their new family rhythm. Breakfasts together, school drop-offs, homework sessions, and shared meals became consistent markers of their life. Ronan participated in decisions, offered guidance, and celebrated Soraya's achievements. Elira stepped back when appropriate, allowing him to bond fully with their daughter while observing the transformation in both. Soraya thrived. Each day, her laughter and curiosity created a bridge between her parents, strengthening the emotional connection between them. Evenings became quiet moments of intimacy for Elira and Ronan, subtle yet meaningful. A shared glance, a hand brushing against hers while assisting Soraya, or quiet conversation. After the child's bedtime became the foundation for a deeper connection. One rainy evening, as the city shimmered under the streetlights, Ronan brought home a small gift for Soraya, a science kit she had mentioned wanting weeks before. She remembered. Soraya exclaimed, hugging him tightly. "I pay attention," Ronan said softly, smiling down at her. Elira watched from the kitchen doorway, heart full. The man who had once abandoned them was now consistently present, thoughtful, and engaged. Not just as a father, but as a partner, and a steady presence in their lives. By nightfall, they sat together on the balcony, Soraya asleep, city lights reflecting off wet streets. "I don't want to make mistakes anymore," Ronan said quietly. "I've lost too much already." "You won't," Elira replied. "As long as you keep being present, patient, and honest, that's enough." He looked at her, eyes soft and earnest. "I can do that. I will do that." And for the first time in years, Elira believed him. The man who had once vanished from her life was finally here. Not perfect, not flawless, but fully committed. Their shared glances lingered a moment longer. Words were unnecessary. They had crossed the difficult terrain of absence, loss, and uncertainty together, and now, in the quiet glow of the city night, they found a shared understanding and unspoken promise. Soraya, their bridge and anchor, had brought them together. Their family, though imperfect and built slowly, was becoming real. Illyra felt a sense of peace, cautious but genuine. The past could not be erased, but the present and future were theirs to shape. Ronan reached for her hand, a gentle touch. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't urgent, it was patient, deliberate, and filled with quiet affirmation. She let him. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that love, patience, and persistence could build a family, even after loss, absence, and silence. The next morning, Manhattan greeted them with bright sunlight glinting off the skyscrapers. Soraya bounded down the stairs, excitement radiating from her every movement. "Mom, Daddy, can we go to the park after breakfast?" she asked eagerly. Ronan smiled, catching Illyra's eye. "We can do that," he said, voice warm and gentle. Illyra nodded. She felt a calm settling over her, a sense that finally they were moving together in the same direction. The man who had once vanished from her life was now fully present. The park was alive with children playing, parents chatting, and joggers weaving through the paths. Soraya ran ahead, exploring every corner with unbridled curiosity. Ronan followed, attentive but not controlling, allowing her to navigate the space while staying close enough to intervene if needed. Illyra walked behind them, smiling softly. She had spent years protecting Soraya, managing her life alone, and now she could observe the bond forming without fear. Ronan knelt at a climbing frame where Soraya had paused. "Do you want me to help you?" he asked. "No, I want to try on my own," she said, determination in her voice. "All right," Ronan said gently. "I'll be right here if you need me." Illyra's chest tightened. Seeing him respect her daughter's independence while still offering support reminded her of the balance he had learned between presence and patience, guidance and freedom. After the park, they walked to a nearby cafe for lunch. Soraya chatted non-stop about the exhibits she had seen at school, her projects, and her plans for the future. Ronan listened attentively, occasionally asking thoughtful questions. He praised her achievements without overshadowing her, and Illyra felt a swelling sense of gratitude. This was what she had hoped for. Not a perfect life, not flawless gestures, but quiet consistency, presence, and attention. A father who loved his child, and a partner who understood the value of patience and care. That evening, as Soraya went to bed, Illyra and Ronan remained in the living room. The city lights reflected softly on the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. "I never realized how much I missed," Ronan admitted, voice low. "Not just the milestones, but these small moments, these quiet times." Illyra reached for his hand, holding it lightly. "You're here now," she said. "That's what matters." Ronan's eyes softened, and he squeezed her hand gently. "I know, and I want to continue being here, for both of you. Every day," Illyra nodded. "I believe that, for the first time in years, she felt certain. He had changed. He was attentive, patient, and committed. Not perfect, but present, fully and deliberately. The following weeks established a comfortable rhythm. Breakfasts were shared, school drop-offs became predictable, homework, sessions and evening routines formed anchors in their daily lives. Ronan was consistent. He participated fully, never imposing, never rushing. Each act of engagement built trust with Illyra and Soraya alike. Soraya thrived, showing confidence, curiosity, and joy. Her laughter became a bridge connecting Illyra and Ronan, reinforcing the slow development of their relationship. One evening, as rain softly tapped against the windows, Illyra found herself sitting beside Ronan on the couch. Soraya had fallen asleep, her small form tucked under blankets. "I don't want to make mistakes anymore," he said quietly. "You won't," Illyra replied. "Just keep being present, patient, and honest. That's enough." He reached for her hand, gentle and deliberate. She didn't pull away. For the first time, they allowed themselves to exist in this space, not rushed, not pressured, just present. Their fingers intertwined naturally, subtly, the unspoken acknowledgement of love growing between them. The days continued with small, meaningful moments. Ronan accompanied Soraya to classes, read bedtime stories, celebrated her accomplishments, and simply existed in the spaces that had once been empty. Illyra observed quietly, realizing how much she trusted him now. Not blindly, but fully enough to imagine a life together, one built slowly, deliberately, and honestly. The past no longer dictated their present. It existed, acknowledged, but it no longer controlled them. One morning, Soraya crawled into bed with them, a bright smile on her face. "Can we all stay in the same house forever?" she asked. Ronan looked at Illyra. She searched his face and saw the certainty there. "Yes," he said before she could speak. Illyra smiled softly, tears pricking her eyes. The man she had loved, the child she had protected, the family they had longed for, it was here. All of it, finally present. From that day forward, they established their life deliberately. Ronan and Illyra shared parenting responsibilities, laughter, and quiet moments of intimacy. They spoke openly, communicated honestly, and allowed their love to grow slowly, strengthened by the foundation of trust and shared care for Soraya. Soraya flourished, the bridge between them, guiding them gently toward unity and love. Every night, they sat together, sharing quiet conversation or reading, stories, the city lights painting the walls softly around them. The family they had longed for, so fragile in the past, was now real. And love, they learned, didn't always arrive when expected. Sometimes it waited until they were ready to hold it without fear. Could you stay patient and let love grow slowly, even after years of waiting? Do you believe some reunions are worth the silence and the time it takes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us if you've ever waited for someone or something you thought was lost. Did it come back? If Illyra, Ronan and Soraya's story moved you, make sure to like, share and subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more captivating love stories with powerful life lessons.